Today we're demonstrating this power-driven clamping model that's been specifically designed to handle the range of drums we have here. These are all screw-top plastic drums, so the lids are removable and they're all of a screw lid design. And they're all food-grade drums, meaning they contain various food products. These are commonly found in the food industry, and generally they're quite difficult to handle because of the plastic material and the relatively slippy surface. Each of these drums is full of water. They all rock slightly as they've got a slightly rounded base. So we've got 4 drums all full of water, and we positioned them on a pallet all touching together so there's no gaps between them. And this is typically how they'd be delivered from a supplier. So to show our machine coming in, we're going to lift them off the pallet and then place them into a dolly or a pallet, basically unloading them as they come in. So our machine's already switched on. Bring our tiller down to activate the drive, and then we drive forward. We've got these butterfly controls, which means we can move very slowly if needed, but we can also move faster once we've actually picked up the drum. Bring the unit in. I'm just going to come in just till the pads are touching the adjacent drums. We can actually clamp the pads slightly so they're closer to the drum. So I'll press our clamp button. So I'm just pressing it a little bit, bring the arms in, they're touching the drum, and I'll drive forward slightly more. Once we're alongside, I'm going to fully clamp. So on the left side of the panel, I've got a clamp pressure gauge, and I can see how much we're squeezing the drum by. We're in the green zone, so it says we're safe to lift. So we can then press our lift button. Reverse the unit back. When we've got a drum lifted, if at any point we want to clamp the drum more, we can just press our clamp button again, and that tops up our pressure gauge. You'll notice the needle on the gauge tends to settle down slightly after clamping, and this is just as the temperature in the system cools down. So now I'm going to get a dolly. We're going to place this drum onto a dolly. Bring our dolly in, line up the drum with the dolly like so. We'll come down. Once the weight's on the dolly, we're going to unclamp. To unclamp, we need to use 2 hands. So this is a safety feature. We can't accidentally drop a drum. So with 2 hands, I've got 2 buttons to press at the same time. So we press unclamp. And we hold the unclamp button on both sides until the pads are fully open and our pressure gauge reads 0. We can then drive the unit away. We'll now rotate the pallet and lift the next drum. So we're going to pick up this drum. I need to lift our pads up slightly. So press the lift button, drive towards it, nice and gently. I'm just looking at the left pad. The left pad's just touched the grey drum here. So the left pad's just touched this one here. And what I'm going to do now is just clamp the arms in a little bit, just to bring them closer to the drum. The system's got a constant tension system. So when we press the clamp button and release, you'll notice the arms continue to move. And this is just the accumulator in the system, which is designed to always keep the same amount of force on the drum. Bring it forward very slightly, and through the window I can see it's all lined up, so I'm going to fully clamp. Again, looking at my clamp pressure gauge, we're into the green zone, so that means we're safe to lift. Pressing our lift button. This unit's got a lot of lift height, so we can lift higher if needed. This would suit us if we need to load onto a high platform. If we're just travelling around, so if we're just moving drums from A to B, it's always sensible to have any loads held reasonably close to the floor, and that's always the safest thing, whether that's a forklift or a drum handler. Once we're finished with a drum, we place it down. Again, unclamping using 2 hands. And move the unit away. So again, driving the unit forward, bring the pads around the drum, touching on the left, and then beginning to clamp. That just brings our pads in, allows us to drive a little bit further forward, and then we'll fully clamp the drum. I've fully clamped this drum, and I'm about sort of this far below the ridge which we're clamping onto. That doesn't matter, because when we lift, we'll simply catch that rim as we lift the drum. Pressing our lift button, bring the unit back. Just to demonstrate, so this drum's full of water. I'm going to stand clear, got my safety shoes on. I can shake it in the unit. There's no way of that coming out of the head. All of these drums have been thoroughly tested, and these clamping pads have been developed exactly for this range of drums. Going to lower it down. Unclamping. And then we'll get the next drum. Looking at the front of the unit, we've got our pads here which are gripping the drum. And you can see that we have this plate, and this is what the weight of the drum is supported on either side. For these particular pads and this model, a recommendation is we want to choose a band on the drum which is about 1/3 of the way down from the top of the drum. And that's where we want to be lifting from. So when I bring these pads around the drum, I'm looking at the drum, I'm going from the top about 1/3 down. I'm going to choose this ring here, and we're going to position this support on each side just in this band here, so that we come up and lift beneath that lip. So bring our unit around, we'll square it up with the drum. Again, it's good just to clamp it a little bit. That brings our pads in. I can check they're all aligned, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to fully clamp. Lift up a little first. So fully clamping the drum. Pressure gauge is in the green, so we're safe to lift. As you can see, we can lift from the corner of a square pallet, but these legs also allow us to lift from the narrow end of a Euro pallet as well. One thing to note regarding the bands, so this is the 5th drum we're going to look at today, is some of these drums have these double bands here. Whenever we're lifting a drum with these double bands, we recommend that you lift and support from the lower of the two. So there's no need to get the support into the middle gap, because it'd be very hard to line up. What we want to do is we want our support to come in here and lift up under the second or the bottom of the 2 bands. We're checking our legs go down each side of the pallet. Bringing our clamps in, checking we're aligned. If we're ever in doubt, we can just walk forward. We've got no one on the controls. So it's a 1-person machine, and we're just checking that the pads are lined up with the centre line of the drum. So we're nicely lined up. We're going to clamp up. Pressing our lift. And unclamping. We're now looking at the rear controls of this machine. The first thing to do when we approach the machine is to take our key, put it into the slot, and then twist it clockwise. This powers up the machine, and you can see that our battery indicator illuminates and does a self-test. As far as buttons on the machine, on the left-hand side we have our lift and lower buttons. On the right we have our clamp button, which is the black one here. And then when we want to unclamp the drum, we have an unclamp button on either side. We need to press these simultaneously, so we press them together at the same time, and this will unclamp the drum. On the left you'll see our pressure gauge, and this is indicating the clamp pressure, so how tightly we're clamping the drum. You notice we have a green segment at the top. We want to be clamping in this zone to indicate that it's safe to lift. If we lift the drum very high, the clamp is disabled. So you see here the unclamp disabled light. What this means is that if the drum is very high, we're not able to unclamp the drum. So if this is illuminated, you won't be able to unclamp, and we need to lower the drum down to a lower level before unclamping. We also have an emergency stop button. So we press this down to cut all power to the machine, and you see our light's gone out, and we lift it up to bring power back to the machine. We're now looking at the tiller assembly. When we pull the tiller down into the operational range, all the controls here will work like normal. But safety features mean that when the tiller is let go of and it returns to vertical, or when the tiller's fully down, all the functions are cut. So we must be in this operating range to use the tiller controls. On the tiller, we have our throttles, which are repeated on each side, and we use our thumbs to drive the unit forward or drive the unit backward. We have a safety button on the top here, and this prevents an operator being crushed should the unit reverse back into us. So if we were reversing and this button touched our body, the unit would drive forward away from us, and that's a safety feature as well. The final thing we have on the tiller is the horn, which is in the middle. So we press this down, and that's to alert anyone in front of the unit that we're coming by. The unit's battery powered. When we want to charge the batteries, we lift up this cover to access the battery compartment. The batteries are connected to the machine here, so we disconnect the battery bank. This is the tail to the batteries, so we then bring in our charger, bring in our external charger and connect it to the battery bank. We can then charge the batteries until they're full, and once the batteries are full and the charge is indicating so, we can disconnect again. We can take our batteries and reconnect them to the machine, and then to close the cover we have this latch. We lift the latch up and drop the cover down. We're now ready to continue.